being out here in nature and seeing these stinkwoods and willows and all of this is about biodiversity. And I've always loved nature, and I have loved this concept of kind of this culture of agriculture. And it's something that we're all in, because the word is about agriculture. And one of the most interesting things is that what we eat, what we wear, everything is due to this amazing thing. And that there's a beautiful African proverb. It says it takes a village to raise a child. And I love that because all of us are involved in agriculture. And in fact, the danger is that our culture is sometimes toxic. And we don't even realize it. We don't realize it by our consumerism. We don't realize it by trying to do good. We've developed seeds that you can only grow in a toxic soup. And they get ill, so we need to cover them with poisons and pesticides. And we don't realize that we get iller and sicker because this green revolution has failed. And so this unbelievable dream started to go horribly wrong. And we thought, right, this is globalization and it's the McDonald's everywhere. But nature isn't McDonald's. Nature is about unique places. And how do those places regenerate in their own culture? And so I've always had this passion, an absolute passion for seeds, but I've also got a passion for recipes. And I don't know if you love the artistry of what people do with food. And when I farm, there's the most incredible thing is to meet chefs and people that love cooking, because it's an alchemy. They take this salt with this vegetable and they do all sorts of magic, and it comes out into something you can see I thoroughly enjoy. And I'm passionate about the eating and the revelry and the people and the stories that go with this incredible thing called culture. And so most of my life, I have collected seeds. They all carry a promise. They carry a kind of a hope, isn't it? And it carries this recipe of what it can grow into. And this is the lovely thing about growing, is every child wants desperately to grow up. Have you noticed that? And then we get to an age where we don't want to grow up anymore. And we start to go down on the other side. And suddenly we don't celebrate our birthdays as much as we did, because nature loves growing. Everything is actually about growing. And so when we see this promise, it's rather like the ideas that people share in these kind of collectives. And so the message to everyone is collect seeds. They're almost like diamonds for our future. And the more seeds we can collect, the better. And so we started a project literally about 1 kilometer away, and we started with seeds, and we realized we had a problem because the seeds came from Holland, or they came from Canada, and we're in Africa. And so we learned something that's very important, is lessons from nature. We've got to localize as much as we can. And what works on this side of the mountain, and if you're in the wine industry, you know, grapes on this side taste different to grapes on that side. And 150 years, every town was famous for their agriculture. They had the best this, or the most delicious this. And so we had the system. And so we learned a brilliant system about what we call landrace seeds. And so we took 60 varieties of tomatoes and we grew them in a row, and we saw what nature did in the cradle of humankind. And some of our tomatoes started to wither. They couldn't handle the heat. Some of them got pests. And we looked at this lovely concept of survival of the fittest, and we used those seeds to crossbreed to make the cradle seeds. And we put them in boxes, and we took them across, and we started to share these seeds with communities. And what they did was quite amazing, is they started to grow. And they started to grow all of these amazing, beautiful organic foods. And we started to realize that, our food industry is like a beauty system. It's all about what conforms to the perfect carrot. And if a carrot isn't conforming, it's ugly vegetables. And so I think we've got to celebrate ugly vegetables. We've got to start celebrating all of these incredible things, because there's no straight river in nature. And why do we have this thing that is about killing biodiversity, going against climate change, doing all sorts of things just with our food? And so we started to grow and we started to do this, and then a miracle happened. And the miracle happened is, this is a Zama community. They're 3 informal settlements or slum communities. And Zamas are positive deviants. They're breaking the law, but they're artisanal miners. because there's a subject that is glaringly missed out in school. My poor parents desperately wanted to me, and I'm a parent, and there's one subject, it's never in any school, but it's called how to make money. And I don't know if you notice that. As parents, you're thinking, I want my kid to go to that class. They don't need to do this one. And so we suddenly realized that Zama-Zamas bring wheelbarrows. And we started what we called the Friday buyout. And the Friday buyout is literally, we go and we collect all of these wheelbarrows, come off the hills over here with the most beautiful organic vegetables you can imagine. And they come in wheelbarrows, and we weigh every single one. We track everyone's allotment of where they've grown it, and we buy their produce, and we track all of the systems. So you know, if you've just planted and we've bought 25 kilograms, you get a little slip that says, you've grown, planted, and done 25 kilograms, and we give you a micro credit linked to a university on what you've done, not your academic source, but you've proven without doubt that you are a damn good sort of agripreneur. And so these wheelbarrows arrive, and so we start this amazing story of people that are making money. And I want to just show you a little bit of what I call the magic. Because there are no charities. This is about here we are. We're just in this corner, and here are 3 slum economies. Because we start the buyout, you suddenly start people mapping out their areas. Everyone is starting to find an allotment. They take away the waste that was there and the rubbish, and suddenly you have dignity appearing. All of these different areas have started to teach us something quite remarkable about the nature of people that have got aspirations, the nature of people that don't have jobs but are looking for livelihoods. And it's about how do we get this concept of recipes and livelihoods and share them? How do we share as many of these as we can? And so we suddenly start to see a very simple concept, and it's our ugly vegetables that have really, really helped us. And so a lot of these vegetables go to some very great VIP places and are sold as the most beautiful and expensive stuff, but the ugly stuff doesn't get sold. And so we've had to find out, how do we solve this thing of ugly vegetables, and what do we do? And so we've learned from the rest of Africa that all of our weeds, our poppies, turn into the most beautiful colors and pigments for artists. And we took it further, and we said, well, hold on, if we've got this, can we do amazing beetroots and spinaches and dried leeks and all sorts of things into the smoothie world for the health industry and for cyclists? Can we juice every weekend? All of the ugly stuff. And we've suddenly found out the ugly stuff pays more than the beauty and fashion industry of a kind of a Woolies food. And we suddenly realized, hold on, our makeup for all of our beautiful women comes from India and China, and we can start using carrots, spinach, beetroot, weeds. We started to suddenly realize, hold on, we learned how to make perfumes out of all of the stuff and the diversity that is right here. And this gave us an incredible lesson around how do we start to rewild the cradle. And what we've seen is we've seen food prices go up and up and up. Have you noticed that? Our minimum wage is here, but our food price is going up. And so there are 3 things that we focus on. We focus on how do we teach agripreneurs to farm into the future where you do have climate change, and how do we make them positive with a cultural farming revolution into permaculture, into regenerative farming, into ways that are not extractive, but actually giving back to the next 7 generations. And it's all about the recipes. And so here is a lovely little thing is, we're the crazy ones. I buy more stockings than almost anyone else. And I fill them with rice and sorghum, and these stockings we bury all over the place, and we leave them for 7 days. In 7 days, all the microbes come in, and all of the fungi, and we add sugars, and we suddenly make the cheapest fertilizers that don't cost anything. So that one little white pill is enough fertilizer for 1 hectare. I can go to Zambia, Malawi, you name it, and you suddenly realize that our microbes, our living soils, have got the answers already. We don't need chemicals. Every soil test that we see, they tell me I'm deficient in this and I'm deficient in this. And if you are a farmer, you can't believe it. It's like your child is deficient. You'll spend anything, but living soils solve all of those instantly. It's not about an inorganic solution, it's about an organic solution. And so we suddenly realized, but our fungi and our soils are amazing. In Africa and South Africa, we've got about 780 of unique fungi that are mind-blowing. The best traditional healers know where the best medicines are, and they know the regions. And we then started to collect all of the grass seeds for this Witwatersrand area and tree seeds. So you take your little seeds and you just gooi. And so you've got to learn, how do all of us become the rewilders of our soils? How do we become the rewilders of all of the areas that we're in? And so we use technology. We measure every farmer, how much we buy, what they do, and we see this incredible growth happening. And this is in the most crazy situation. Farmers are doing well. We see in green, we bought from them this week. Yellow, last week. Red, we haven't bought from them this Friday. And we started to learn, how do we look at micro-learning where your faculty is your university? It's not somewhere far away. We don't have to go elsewhere to learn. Right here is where we need to learn. And the revolution happened on a phone. This becomes one of the most wonderful things to create livelihoods. And this is the recipe that we've been learning and we've been applying. We take people that are struggling and we do it as cheaply as possible. And once you're struggling and you show and you grow your enterprise muscle, we get you to the next level where as a citizen being a liability, you're now starting to be a national citizen that is actually an asset to our nation. Because you're stable, you're healthy, you're educating, and you're starting to realize that we can create livelihoods and we can get into this growth. And then as a family, we get to be successful, and it's a different set of recipes each stage that we need. Until finally, we've got farmers that are now significant, and they've learned this making money and farming muscle. It doesn't come easy. You've got to earn from white belt to black belt. You've got to go through the process. And then what we learned that AI is unbelievable in helping us. Data for each region is incredible in creating livelihoods. And then we realized I went to school and I had to wear a uniform. I had to stand in line. I had to do all of the things to conform. And with AI, we can build universities around you, the individual. So we suddenly started to look at dating apps. How many of you have been on a dating app? We ask people, swipe left, swipe right. I like doing this, I don't like doing this. I'm good at this, I'm not good at this. This gives me stress. I'll procrastinate this I'll do in an instant. And so we learned not everyone wants to be farming, but some people want to be in the beauty. Some people want to be in logistics. And so we started to say, how do we create livelihoods around you, the individual, with data and AI, rather than you being one of the millions sitting in learnerships that you actually know you're not interested in. You're doing it, faking the system, and it's costing us millions because there's no other opportunities. We're not seeing them. And so here is just how we developed Landrace into a business, how we developed worm farms, black soldier fly farms, cultural creativity with investing in music and art. We started to look at how do we take mine land, grow hemp, kenaf, and flax, and turn it into future pods and building, and how are we teaching people how to use this and change land. We then started to look at water distilling and look at this, and we can start with next to nothing and then build up. You don't come up with your huge solutions in the beginning, you start small and you grow. Struggle, stable, successful, significant. We de-risk the investments. We suddenly started to look at drones, into regenerative buildings, moving around with fencing on how do we fence with a product that comes from sasol, that the resin doesn't burn in our coal to petrol process. So 2,500 degrees, our farming fence posts don't burn, and they're made with hemp and kenaf. The straw that you're on. How do we do river cleanups as a business? How do we do conservation as a business and not as a charity? That's the revolution of the culture shift that we need. And so there's a new concept. And I don't know how many of you watched the TV program Survivor. It says outplay, outwit, outlast. Well, we live in Africa, we have Ubuntu. And what I want you to do is I want you to think about your neighbors, because it's not about outplaying, it's about thriving by inviting everyone in together. So my invitation to you is, how do we share a regenerative recipe book on culture that all of us are writing? How do we share that so that we all thrive as opposed to merely survive? Thank you so much.